In the mid part of the 1800s, America was being ripped apart. Political, cultural, economic, moral differences were forcing apart the North and the South. Neighbor would turn on neighbor, brother on brother. In fewer places was this more apparent than in the border states. Some states choosing not to secede, but also not joining the Confederacy. Kentucky never seceded, even though there were many within its borders who felt Southern sympathies. Even within Nelson County, we had sons fighting fathers, brothers fighting brothers, neighbor against neighbor. We were a nation, a state, a county divided.
In September of 1862, the Southern Army was coming out of Tennessee in force. General Braxton Bragg was coming north, and he was heading toward Louisville. He got held up at Mumfordville. He got held up also because it was a very hot time. We had a drought, it was hot and dry, and water was very scarce. He had a wagon train of over 10 miles long. Now, this supply wagon carried all the things they needed that the soldiers were not carrying on their back. He went to Hodgensville from Mumfordville. He went through Hodgensville, down the Knobs, passing where Abraham Lincoln lived and went to school, coming into New Haven. His 26,000 troops, 26,000 Confederate troops on foot and on horseback, took 3 days to travel through New Haven. Can you imagine the people standing out and watching? Can you imagine some of them behind the windows of their homes, peeping out, mothers holding onto their children so they wouldn't get trampled under the horses' hooves or run over by the wagons? The excitement of the Southern Army coming. It was hot, it was dusty. They crossed the Rolling Fork River. Maybe they had stopped and let their horses drink, but they came into New Haven. And Sylvester Johnson had a wonderful house, wonderful brick house right there next to New Haven, on the road to Bardstown. And he had a well, and he offered the soldiers a drink at his well. Of course, the well, you had to dip the water up, and he had a tin cup there. Well, before it was finished, every soldier had their tin cups out. I say every, I can't say 26,000 soldiers drank from this well. But the story goes, enough soldiers took a drink from Sylvester Johnson's well that when they all finally passed through New Haven, his well was dry. That's the sort of story that people like to pass down in their memories about events because it's simple, it's understandable, everybody needs a drink of water. And when you have thousands of people taking a drink of water in a short length of time, pretty soon your water supply is dry. This was what was happening when Bragg was moving through this area to arrive in Bardstown in September 22nd, 1862. His troops spread out all around the community. His units camped all around the community. Too many soldiers for a very small town. Too much activity, lots of excitement. Those that had their drink at the well in New Haven were probably wishing for more drinks before they ever got to Bardstown because it's quite a walk. The units would move out around Bardstown to the plantations. All the plantations had sources of water, either springs or ponds or creeks. They were assigned almost as a guard all around the community, and particularly the main roads, the Louisville Road, the road to Elizabethtown, the road to Springfield. As the units came up and were assigned their places, the scouts, Joseph Wheeler and his scouts, were sent north on the Louisville Road. And before the occupancy of Bardstown was over, the scouts on the Louisville Road made it to Fern Creek. They didn't just stay in Nelson County. They were surging ahead to see how far they could go without getting into trouble or getting in contact with Union troops. Now, is he going to go to Louisville from here? I don't think so, and history says he doesn't. He was on his way to Louisville when he realized he had to find more forage for his horses, more water, And he determined instead of going straight north from Hodgensville, he would come east and head toward Frankfort. But he's in Bardstown, and he's resting in Bardstown, gathering his officers, talking about their plans, giving everybody a chance to water up and eat everything they could and decide where they're going to go next, because they are in enemy country when they've arrived in Kentucky. As soon as the Union Army heard that Bragg was coming, the military militia here in Bardstown, the martial law officers, left. By the 1st of September, they had left, and they had taken all of their soldiers with them, including those that were sick in the hospital at Spalding Hall. They had some soldiers there that could not leave. They were too sick to be moved. Those that could be moved were put on the train and sent to Louisville. And then the soldiers moved out. They realized that they weren't here to keep Bragg from coming, and they had answered their orders and moved on out. And as soon as the soldiers were gone, you know those flags I mentioned earlier? Those flags came out of the cupboards, and they were unfurled and they were hung up and down the streets of Bardstown. And when Braxton Bragg and his army got here on September 22nd, he had a flag-waving welcome, knowing that Bardstown was very sympathetic to the South. I hate to say he was very disappointed, though, when about 10 days later, he had not been able to raise the Kentuckians to come to his help or to his aid. He had hoped that this was what was going to happen, that we were going to have an influx of soldiers to come and join his army. Though we did have many local men to join a unit that went off with Bragg, it was not the thousands of Kentuckians that he had been led to believe that would come and enlarge his army here and to free Kentucky from the Union heel that they were under. So Bragg was disappointed, and maybe that's part of what happened later when he would leave Bardstown and go east, and his army end up in the battle at Paradale.